If you think misinformation, the thing in news or political news, it's out of control in the real estate industry. This is Bill Gross in my weekly real estate update. If you've been following us for a while, I've been pointing out examples. And I think either I'm getting better at finding the nonsense or the real estate news, because there is less dramatic news, is ratcheting up the idiocy. And today we have a few examples. You know, our school system does nothing really to prepare most people. One thing I've learned in real estate, most people know nothing about saving money, budgeting, credit, basic fundamentals of finance, and as a result, aren't prepared. And then the news just misleads them more and more into a path that's not going to work for them. And we're going to take a look at that today, some examples I think that are some of the worst from some of the biggest names in education for the real estate industry. But before we get into that, as always, let's start with where the market is, because people say, well, how is the market? And the truth is kind of a volatile rates have jumped up here in the last few days, and we're back up just below 7%, approaching 7, below the highs of the year, the highs of the end of last year. But we had been down as low as 5.9 and seem to be heading perhaps down. But again, you know, a movement is not a direction necessarily. Just like that decrease wasn't a trend down, this increase is not necessarily a trend up. But today, rates are significantly higher, about 0.75% higher than they were just a few weeks ago. So that will take some of the steam out of the market inevitably. It's not necessarily a crash. We've seen before that even at 7% rates, there are plenty of buyers that make sense to buy homes, because the rising interest rates is reflected of an increased economy, prices and such, and there are enough people who are winning who can buy houses to offset those that are not. Another thing we want to keep our eye on all the time is inventory, and inventory continues to be at record low levels. We can see the current year now is tied 2021, so the year before last. It only trails the peak of the pandemic, which was last year at this time, kind of the second run around of the pandemic before it came back up a little bit. 2021 was really the worst year overall. And we're tracking at that level and declining to get there. So inventory, and you know, historically, inventory had been much higher. It's only during pandemic that it had been so low. So we still have so few homes, and the contention is that as long as we have that few homes, it's impossible to have a housing crash, because sellers are just not selling homes and buyers are bidding on them. There's not enough houses to have more sellers than buyers, and that's what it's going to take for prices to go down. More locally here in Los Angeles, I use Altos Research, a great source, and they still show this a slight seller's market, a rating of 40, and you can see the median price of new listings has gone up overall, while the days of market's gone up, which just means there's more houses on the market. I think it's more reflective of realtors putting listings on because they're aggressive and trying to get some business than the actual market changing. One of the factors that's critical is that the industry is so varied by region. Here's a graph. Now, this is, I think, a bad title by Fortune magazine. They make it sound like there's different niches the market is. I think the market is different in every location, in every neighborhood, in every price range. And here's a series that shows you from Seattle down to Chicago. Both some of these markets ran up a lot, and then the ones that ran up the most are having the biggest corrections. The ones that ran up the least are having the least correction. Well, that makes sense. So that's one way to look at our current price changes, not as a market crash, but really more as a correction off of where the markets were. Another important piece of information that came out last week was the building cost index. Now, houses are made of materials, wood and cement and metal and nails and windows and cabinets and labor and fuel costs to get everything there. And as those costs go up, inevitably, the cost of housing will go up as well. And you can see that 2022, the numbers are now in, housing prices continue to be about 10%, 9% higher than the prior year. So there's no way that housing prices can go down because they're worth more. Each house has gone up in value just based on the material that it has in its physicality. So overall, I think we should say the market continues to be steady. We should be concerned with the rates jumping up. We should be assured with the inventory staying tight that we're not falling out of line. But overall, I'd say the market continues to march on, and now we're into the spring buying season. So what does the real estate industry news do to help you? Well, it doesn't. It's just unbelievable. Here's Fannie Mae, quasi-government agency. What to do when your home appraisal is below your asking price. Now, Think about that one for a second. We had a period of time where prices went up so quickly, appraisals were below the asking price. That was 2 years ago, and maybe a year ago that stopped. Now it's the opposite, where you need to watch, even though it appraises, maybe that means because the house sold that price 3 months ago, should you still pay that much? It's really the opposite. But here's Fannie Mae issuing a 2 years late advice. So it's great advice 2 years ago, or a bad topic to talk about today. I don't know which one is worse. I just find it comical that these are people who are paid a lot of money. They live like kings in their corporate headquarters in Virginia, and they're putting out information that can only mislead people. But that's not the worst. The worst this week, with a double raspberry, is the Wall Street Journal. So part of buying houses is people, customarily save money, scrimp, save. As Dave Ramsey says, beans and rice, until you get into your first house. So what does the Wall Street Journal do? How does it help you save money? I'm sorry. I just find this hysterical. To save money, you should skip breakfast. Now, okay, let's just be honest here. I'm overweight. I should eat less. I get it. But I don't think that's a money technique to which to skip breakfast. If you're a healthy person, and look at the picture of the person in the photo, they look relatively healthy. So they're going to skip breakfast and eat more lunch. Is lunch cheaper? Is it cheaper to eat at lunchtime? I think what they're pointing out is the cost of eggs and bacon and orange juice and toast have gone up. But to be honest, eggs go into things we make in the lunch and dinner menu as well. And people have omelets for lunches, and some people have them for dinners too. Somebody please explain to me how skipping breakfast is good for saving money, unless you're saying reduce your calorie count. Of course, that will save money. But I just don't think that's business advice. I don't think that's money advice. I think that should be beneath the paywall of the Wall Street Journal. You can't really even read the article unless you pay the Wall Street Journal for the privilege of reading that. Not to be outdone, the Wall Street Journal has another article, which is California Mass Transit hopes for bailout in already tight budget. Now, if you live here in Los Angeles, you know that there have been booms around where the new train stations went into. One down on Overland or National, I guess. All the housing around that has boomed. Down on Robertson and Venice Boulevard, housing around there boomed because people think, well, you can take the train, you can take it cheaply to your destination. The reality is those prices went up dramatically, and relative to houses, they've not performed as well. But not only that, I'm on the South Robertson Council in Los Angeles. The ridership is way down. They're not getting the numbers to support the ridership. And so you have an article from the Wall Street Journal who's been a cheerleader for mass transit California, now acknowledging that the mass transit needs a bailout at a time when California, which just had a mass surplus they squandered last year, now is facing a budget deficit of $40-50 billion. So the state has less money to bail out anybody, let alone bailing out mass transit. So what happened to all those articles about buying houses near mass transit? Is that still a good idea or not? And again, I think the Wall Street Journal has been a real cheerleader for mass transit rather than following what people want, kind of pushing people to where the business is. These are big contractors, big political powers. And at the end of the day, what we're finding is people really don't want to live there. They still, at least in Southern California, want to live the California dream of getting a home and having their own transportation. So a lot covered today, but I think the Wall Street Journal stands out as misleading homeowners. Where's the market today? Well, the market is still where we're at. I have a new listing that I put on the system on Thursday, got several offers already, and I have closings. People are closing, sellers are making concessions to get them closed. Buyers are accepting concessions to get them closed. The market continues to be, from everything I can say in our area, a healthy, reasonable, normal spring market. But the most important thing is what's best for you. Is it a good time to buy or sell? Depends on your circumstances. Let's get together and talk about it. If I can help, reach out. Bill Gross, 310-210-0008. My information down below. Or see me on social media at Bill Gross EXP. And as always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.